All right, everybody, welcome back. It is September 9th, 2018, 5:39 p.m., and we have some updating to do. Now, for those of you that have been following closely, we officially have Hurricane Helene right over here, just off the coast of Africa. It's just dipped underneath the Cape Verde Islands. And then we have Isaac right here, which is it's basically borderline hurricane status. It is a high tropical storm, about 65 miles an hour. I'm expecting this to also become a hurricane by the end of tonight. So possibly even by the time this video uploads, we could be dealing with three significant hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean all at the same time. Hurricane Florence being obviously the biggest threat right now, as it is gaining strength every couple hours. And the path and the route that it has to take is getting smaller and smaller. And I don't like bringing news like this, guys, but we are dealing with a serious situation in Florence. And I'm not just going based on my opinion anymore. I'm reading in-depth articles. I'm looking at all the meteorologists that are following the storm very closely, and they are all calling for the people, especially in the Carolinas, to start preparing for this storm, because it has nowhere else to go. And what I want to show you is a couple things. We spoke about this yesterday when I showed you that chart that my brother, who is a meteorologist for the Navy, sent me. And now they are actually talking about this exact high pressure, which is going to determine where Florence is going to go. This is not an if anymore. This is a when and where situation. So there's a high pressure. Well, there has been high pressures beneath and beside Florence, which has steered it into its current position. Now we're dealing with a high ridge in the upper area just off the coast of the Northeast. You can see that it kind of ends out in the Atlantic, so we have a small gap here. This is why you are seeing these arrows, because when this pressure is released, it allows these storms to move north. They move in a counterclockwise motion, and in the northern hemisphere, hurricanes or tropical storms, or basically any low pressure system, they technically want to shoot in a northern direction. Apparently that's based on the Earth's spin. That can be up for debate. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the fact that we have a major hurricane, or at least will become a major hurricane once again as it approaches states within the East Coast. And now you see these arrows all the way down from Georgia all the way up to the Chesapeake Bay. So a lot of questions being asked down in the comments section about whether people near the Chesapeake Bay, Delaware, New Jersey should prepare. I hate giving instructions as far as preparing, because I don't want to tell people to go out and spend their money on things that they turn out, it ends up they don't need them. But I do stress the seriousness of this situation. And basically, yes, guys, if you live in between these two areas, you need to be monitoring this storm on a daily basis, if not every couple hours, over the next 3 to 4 days, because we could be looking at landfall as early as Thursday. We are at the 9th right now. We're talking the 13th, the 14th, and there's something very unique about this storm that may happen that may make this thing a lot worse than just your typical landfall hurricane. There are many models showing that this hurricane may come into this area and sit here for up to 3 solid days. Half of it in the ocean, half of it on land, just refueling as it spins counterclockwise. And that would be, like I said yesterday, completely devastating to wherever this thing goes. So as the time runs out, guys, you got to understand that there is nowhere else for this storm to go. It does want to track up in this direction. We are going to see somewhat of a northern hook as it also moves west, but it's all based on this high pressure system that it's going to allow it to either move up into states closer to the Chesapeake Bay or Virginia, and that would include New Jersey. But just because this gap is here, that does not mean the storm will take this exact path. Again, most of the models still right now have not changed much, including the GFS, the European, and the Canadian models all have this storm going right into this area of South Carolina, North Carolina, and obviously affecting Virginia in that because of the close-knit borders. And just basically it's a cone of uncertainty at this point, but with almost a guaranteed landfall, and we're going to look more into that. But I just wanted to put more emphasis on what is actually steering this storm, and we talked about it in the previous video, guys. It's this high pressure ridge that's going to be above the storm that is going to determine where this landfall is going to be. But that does not mean much, because when this storm gets to this area, all these areas will be affected by surf, riptides, you name it, high wind rates, especially if this thing reaches Category 4. And to show you that they are still projecting this, this is the third day in a row that we are seeing mainstream weather outlets saying that this is going to rapidly intensify back into a Category 4 storm, and even possibly be a Category 4 at landfall. That even leaves room for the possibility of a Category 5, guys. So I know a lot of people out there have issues with making projections anything from 5 days out, but we're within that period now. And when you see this chart 3 days in a row, and you look at the models and you watch this thing explode as it's heading towards the coast, you have no choice but to really almost agree with it and prepare for it. Now, as far as the state of emergency situation goes, I have a few comments to say about that. Now, I understand why South Carolina and North Carolina put in their early state of emergency. Maybe they had info we didn't at the time, or maybe they were very much relying on these charts here that are showing that this thing will become a Category 4. But channels like Force 13 and my buddy down below, Norway Tracking, they make a good point. I feel like, and I agree with them in this, that state of emergency has been thrown around a lot and could actually be used a little less. Now, when you see the word emergency, people get scared, they get panicked, they want to prepare right away, and sometimes those states of emergencies end up being not really a big deal. So when South Carolina and North Carolina first put out that state of emergency and I reported on it, I did so based on the fact that they said state of emergency. But I do totally agree with the fact that there should be a buffer word in there. There should be something like the, I believe Force 13 mentioned a state of preparedness or something like that. And then if, you know, data shows something more significant happening, then we can move into our state of emergency. As of right now, though, I don't see much changing in this path. And that is, again, based on a high pressure that's going to keep this storm right into this area. It has nowhere else to go. With also an under-ridge pressure in this area, which more than likely will keep this away from Florida. Now, is it possible? Of course it's possible that the storm could stay south and affect parts of Florida. We have to wait and see. These next 2 or 3 days are absolutely critical to what this storm is going to do. But just seeing this chart 3 days in a row now put out by the Weather Channel. I know some of you trust that, some of you don't. I use it as a source, as they have good charts, they have good graphs that explain a lot, so it's easier for me to explain to you guys. But seeing this is just not good. Category 4 is a major, major hurricane. 150-mile-an-hour winds slamming into the coast of Charleston or any part of South Carolina and North Carolina will be absolutely devastating. This storm will be retired, you name it. If this stays to be what they're saying it's going to be. I know I'm jumbling all over my words right now because, you know, it's really hard to see anything other than this happening at the moment. Now, we're going to go through these storms real quick. We're going to look at each one of them independently, and this is just crazy. We got 1, 2, and 3, and then we have this other thing going on in the Gulf. That just sort of popped up out of nowhere, could be a threat within the next 5 days. So we have a lot to go over, guys. Now, some of you that look at these charts ask questions about why one chart says 0%, and then if you go to another chart, it says something like 20%. This is what you have to look at. This disturbance is 20% chance over 5 days. When you look at this chart, this is a disturbance chance over 48 hours. So the 0% is what they're saying. It won't form in 48 hours, but within a 5-day period, it has a 20% chance of forming. So we have to watch the Gulf, as there is a big storm brewing just under Cuba right now that could potentially shoot this gap right here and cause some significant issues in the Gulf. We're going to have to watch and see what happens. That will be within the next 5 days as well. This could be going on at the same time that we are watching Florence hit some of our southern states. Also, we have Isaac at 70 miles per hour right now. Borderline hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, more than likely will be by the end of tonight. And then we have just received word that Category 1 Helene has reached that 74 mile an hour mark where it makes it a Category 1 storm. Now we're going to talk about a little bit of the directions. You're looking at Florence right here. This is the radar Doppler, whatever you want to call it, of Florence right now. Its spin is going according to hurricane spin. We are going to see that eye develop again. You will be seeing that gap. There's no doubt about it in my mind at this point, as it has already exited the shear wind event. We have our current spaghetti plots, which once again, 4 days in a row now, these things have become tighter and tighter, and you could see South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and then a couple of these have this coming up in this area, and that again is based on that pressure allowing it to shoot through that little bit of a gap there. So the possibility is there. But again, the main concern with this storm, guys, is how long is it going to sit there? And that's what I want to show you. This is Isaac right here. So this is the storm in between Florence and Isaac, or Florence and Helene, rather. It got the name Isaac because it was the third one to be named a tropical storm. That's why Helene is behind it. Isaac is in front. Isaac is expected to stay very far west through the Leeward Islands and then get into the South Caribbean. From that point on, it's just a waiting game. That's days out from now. So we're going to watch this storm. We're going to see if it stays together or if it breaks apart. But some of these models have it due shooting up into the middle of the Atlantic. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. I do see Isaac staying on this pattern. And then we have Helene right here, guys. Helene already developing an eye. We got those deep red colors, which will soon become a complete donut shape looking shape. It will have an eye right in the middle of it. And this storm hopefully will keep these tracks right here. It's going to come west a little bit. You can see our black triangle is our current direction. That is not a spaghetti plot. That's not a projected path. It's just the exact direction the storm is heading as we speak, but it is expected to move up just like Florence was at one point, but because of the other action going on in this area, it really has nowhere else to go but north. So let's hope it stays that way. It did become a hurricane pretty fast. It may become a strong hurricane, but we want it to stay out in the middle of the Atlantic, especially if we're going to be dealing with a significant storm in the Gulf and then a major landfall of Hurricane Florence. So you could see on our rain rate chart, they are already projecting that once Florence hits, when you see a color like that and you match it to this chart, you're talking 7 inches of rain in a very short period of time. That will definitely cause flooding. When you add the wind to that and the surf, a Category 4 storm could produce as much as 11, 10, 11, 12-foot storm surge on top of 7 inches of rain. And then if this thing sits here for days, guys, that is where it's going to be very, very bad. And some of our charts, we're going to look at that, and we're going to show how this storm has the capability of sitting there for literally 3 days. And we're going to go to tropical tidbits for that. We're going to start with the Canadian model, as we do every day. Okay, so we can see here we are at the 9th right now, so this is the current status of where our storms are. We have Florence, here is Isaac, and here is Helene. And now we're going to move forward, and you're going to see what I'm talking about, where this storm wants to just sit there and watch how long it sits there for. As we move into landfall territory, you're going to see that September 14th would be a landfall according to the CMC. Sorry, I already forgot what model I was using. And then watch the dates. I want you to watch how long this hurricane stays right in this area. We get through the 15th, that's 1 day. We get into the 16th, that's 2 days. And then the 17th, it is still there. That's 3 days that this hurricane is going to be sitting off the coast, spinning ocean water back onto the coast, which looks like more of a northern California or northern North Carolina deal instead of South Carolina. But if this happens, guys, we're talking ridiculous amount of flooding. It is just going to keep repeating and recycling the water, pulling it from the warm ocean right back onto land. So if this thing sits for 4 days, that's going to be a whole new ball game. Now let's get on to the European model, which is still showing more of a beeline shot. We're still dealing with the Europeans saying this storm is going to go boom, it's going to go inland a little bit, and then it's going to start to sit over the West Virginia area. Still, it's based on a pressure that's coming across the U.S. that's pinning it here. Now, that also is what's going to cause the Canadian model to believe that it's going to stay in that area. So there's the European version. You could see how the Europeans have Isaac moving still to that western direction towards the South Caribbean. And then we have Helene, which could become a very strong hurricane, but also, according to this chart, expected to move up and mix in with another invest that we have in the Atlantic currently. Now on to the famous GFS. Let's see what they have to say. Now, I believe the GFS is going to agree a lot with the Canadian model as far as this storm hitting and then just sitting here, which is not gonna be good. I'm telling you that right now. And that's not just me. I'm not exaggerating this whatsoever. There's people in the Carolinas already out buying supplies. They're going to be hearing about evacuation routes very shortly. I'm going to provide links in the coming videos of how to access those websites and know where to go if you are in those areas of evacuation, especially if this storm is going to stay here for days. People are not going to be able to withstand that. The flooding is going to be too bad, the wind is going to be too bad, and you're just not going to be able to really be in these areas for this time period. It could be 3 to 4 days that this storm just sits here and just continues to recycle the water. I'm going to backtrack one session here. We're going to go to the previous 12-hour look. This gives us an idea of what they expect the storm to be like and how long it's going to be there for. So you can see again, we're looking at a September 13th to 14th date, a landfall a little bit more to the northern North Carolina looks to be where this one wants to go. The Canadian model had it a little more south, but nonetheless, just watch the dates. We're on September 14th there. Moving to the 15th, the storm has not moved. If anything, it nudged south. Still 941 millibar pressure. That's category 3 to 4 status, guys. We're talking about a category 3, and then look at that. It backs up into the ocean again on September 16th. This is 3 days after landfall and drops to 916 pressure. We could be dealing with a category 5 storm. This thing may hit as a category 4. It may back out of the ocean and become a category 5. This is based on the GFS. Now, I know a lot of people don't rely on the GFS, but I'm using the GFS right now to show that the Canadians and the GFS both show that this storm is going to sit here. And that is worst case scenario, guys. That would not be good in any way, shape, or form. So, again, I don't like to be over excited about storms or try to give you data that is not true, but every chart I'm looking at is showing this thing touching and sitting there, and that is not what we want. If you guys remember last year, Hurricane Jose sat out in this area for about 7 or 8 days, not affecting land really. It did affect some surf along the coastlines of the northeast states, but it sat there. So we know it's possible. We know these storms can do that. And if this is the case, if this storm Florence makes landfall as a category 4 and then just sits here, this will be a storm that will be talked about for years and years and years, and you will more than likely never see the name Florence again on a hurricane list unless maybe they use it for the Pacific Ocean list or something like that. So I'm doing my best to not get over excited about this. I know we try to keep people calm on this website, on this channel. We try to give the accurate data so people know what to do. But guys, we're in a period of time now where there is nowhere else for this storm to go except for these states here. So we are almost guaranteed a landfall. If we're not going to get a landfall, we're going to get a hurricane sitting just outside the coast of these states that is just going to be whipping water and wind inland for 3 to 4 possible days. Now, Ventus Sky, you can move into the 16th. You can move into the 17th, and you can even move into the 18th, and you can still see this counterclockwise spin in these states. So the next couple days, even week and a half, is going to be just a mess for the Northeast and for the South, and basically every East Coast state that this thing affects. And it's just, we're just too close for comfort right now. So I wanted to get this report out to you guys. I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little excited, but this is what I do, and this is what I love to get the info out to you guys so you have the time to prepare for this. Now, those of you that live in South Carolina, North Carolina, I'm sure you're very much aware of what the situation is. Now it's just a countdown. So these daily updates, I'm going to be doing multiple videos a day to keep track on these storms as well, and our new friend in the Gulf. Now, if I could find, I have so many tabs pulled up here. I'm sorry about that. Because I just want you guys to get all different visuals of what we're looking at here, and you could clearly see that this is just a conveyor belt of storms with another one coming. The next name in the list is Hurricane Joyce, one of my favorite aunts in the world who passed away. So that's going to be interesting to follow that hurricane if that becomes one itself. But you could see here in the Gulf now, you're getting some of those deep purples, and that is important because that is what we're watching now. That is an invest. They are watching that. We are watching that, and that could shoot the gap and go right into the Gulf here, just as Florence is making its landfall. So it could be a double hit if the data that we have now stays true. Let's see if I could find the page that this might be it right here. Here we go. So this is the area to watch as of right now for that disturbance in the Gulf. Again, it's saying a 0% chance over 48 hours, but when you get to this chart, it's a 20% over 5 days. So between this point and this point is going to be 5-day mark. Between Florence and the 13th is about a 5-day mark, maybe 4 days. So we need to see what happens. We could be dealing with some significant issues going on around Texas and Louisiana, just as we're dealing with the potential catastrophic storm that may be hitting the Carolinas. So I think that's enough for now. Basically what I'm doing right now, guys, is I'm just hoping everyone is preparing for the worst, because there's not really much else you can do at this point. This is a very big storm. It's going to rapidly intensify. There's nothing out there to stop it, and that's where we're at right now. So with that said, I'm going to end this this update. I'm going to bring you more updates later. Isaac could become a hurricane any hour now. If that is the case, I will report it. And then we have 3 hurricanes to deal with, and another big storm coming off the coast of Africa, which hasn't reached the water yet. Like I said, will become, or possibly become, Hurricane Joyce. So there's the Gulf system right there, guys. Very, very dark clouds. You don't like to see that. That means very, very strong moisture, lots of lightning, lots of powerful storms in there. And if they cling together and they decide to shoot this gap and move into the Gulf, this is certainly enough space for this thing to form into a tropical storm or even a Category 1 storm. So, all right, guys, long video. Sorry about that, but all this info had to get out to you. I hope everyone's having a good day, good evening. I would like to get another video out tonight. If I don't like making promises with that. Things happen. I get busy sometimes, and I have to do other stuff. So if you don't hear from me tonight, tomorrow is another day. We will talk about Florence, obviously, until it is dead and gone. And that's that for now, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Caroline and I appreciate every single one of you. And we just hope for the best for everyone in the South Carolina and North Carolina region. That includes Georgia and Virginia as well. So it's a waiting game now, guys. So take care, stick with me, and we will be back with another update shortly. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.